All right, everybody, you know what it is. College football, Monday Madness. We're here. Chris Griffin of the Horns Down podcast will be joining us very shortly. But as always, I have Jance Sports with me. Jance, with National Signing Day, or early National Signing Day, I should say, right around the corner, we've got a lot to discuss. But before we get into the recruiting, because I really want Chris to be here for that, to give us a lot of the OU point of view, and then to give the crosstown rival Texas point of view. Let's talk about this weekend, because as Alabama fans, we had a really good weekend when another individual found themselves in the pantheons of college football in Bryce Young, the Heisman Trophy winner. Now, you put out a video about it. It was fantastic, but go ahead and kind of give us a rundown of your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that this is one of the biggest, possibly one of the biggest Heisman Trophy winners I think of, since Cam Newton. I feel like this is one of the most impressive Heisman Trophy seasons of since Cam Newton. And I know what people will say. Well, Joe Burrow had the dominant 5,500 season. Again, you had Baker Mayfield, what he was able to do with Oklahoma, and that was incredible. But if you look at what Bryce Young's everything that he's got to deal with, the fact that he had one healthy running back going into the SEC championship game, Trey Sanders again still recovering from his car accident, Brian Robinson having the injury with his foot. Jace McKellen, Rodell Williams,
Yeah, big losses.
Kamar Wheaton, the offensive line issues where you had to put your center at right tackle because you couldn't figure out who's going to play in that particular position. And then you had to try to figure out your right guard spot with the inconsistencies with Ecure, your left guard spot with Javon Cohen being inconsistent, Darren Delcourt being hurt, so you had to rely on your third string center to step in there for you. You had all these things going against you. John Mechie being hurt, all the controversy going on between your coaching staff, and the fact that Bryce Young still was able to put up the numbers that he was able to do. 550 yards against Arkansas, the 90-yard drive against Auburn where he got sacked 8 times, the LSU football game where he had to try to bring that team back and keep the game competitively, the A&M game where they could have easily got blown out, but Bryce Young kept them in that game. I mean, some of the things that Bryce Young was able to do this year, we have not seen a quarterback able to do with the amount of things going against him. Again, Joe Burrow had a lot of things going against him. He had 3 first-round talents with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson, and we all know how 3 of those guys are doing in the NFL. With Terrence Marshall, who easily could have been a first-round receiver, right, if he never would have opted out. So Bryce Young, with everything that he's had, it's impressive. It's incredible, right? And again, you look at 2021, Bryce Young, Will Anderson. Without those 2 players, Bama's easily a 4-loss football team. The same thing happened in 2010 with Nick Fairley and Cam Newton. You take those 2 players out, you saw what happened the next year later. They went 7-5. The same thing could happen if those 2 players are gone. Bryce Young definitely deserved this Heisman.
Yeah, what's so interesting to me is when we're talking about this football season and we're talking about some of these big teams, right? Like you and I on this podcast, we were just here a week ago with Nino Sports Corner, fantastic Texas content creator. But one of the things we're talking about with him, and we've heard for weeks, how hard it is to win without consistent offensive line play. And how many times did we look at the Texas football team this year and say, a lot's not going right for them, but their offensive line is so porous. How can we really put it on the quarterback? How can we really say that Texas offensive line per Pro Football Focus had a higher win percentage than the Alabama offensive line did this year? Now, in fairness, towards the end of the season, specifically that Georgia game, they played up to standard. They were fantastic in the Georgia game, and that's part of what makes that so frustrating. Is because you and I know the talent in that room, and we're sitting there watching the Georgia game being like, well, this is why we've been crying about this for weeks now, because this is what it should look like. This is how talented y'all are. This is where we should be. But we talk about how hard it is to be successful for these other teams, but I feel like the inconsistencies at the offensive line position really got glossed over this year for Alabama because they were still able to be so successful. But I can't agree more, man. I think that really goes to highlight how impressive Bryce was. And then you look at how he was able to keep these drives alive, right? You brought up the Auburn drive, the 98 yards, 2-minute drills, no timeouts. But look at when he made those plays. A really key 4th and 7 or 4th and 10 that he converted, and then the touchdown on a 3rd and 10. Right? I mean, or 4th and 10, right? So when the moments were the biggest in every instant, that's where he showed up. The scariest thing is he's just a sophomore. He's just a sophomore and he's getting better. Like you saw a progression throughout the year, and then he got comfortable running the football. And man, he's tough to bring down when he decides to run. Now, it's tough to say because it's hard to complain when Bryce Young wins the Heisman, when, you've had all the success, but Will Anderson, right? Will Anderson, easily one of the most talented players in college football, does not get the Heisman invitation. Aiden Hutchinson does. Aiden Hutchinson's a phenomenal player, right? I don't want to gloss over the fact we can't pretend like Aiden Hutchinson isn't a top football player. The dude is incredibly talented. Will Anderson has him beaten every statistical category, right? So when you're seeing this, what do you think it is, right? Is it just that they didn't want two players from Bama? What was your thoughts on Aiden Hutchinson making it and Will Anderson not?
I feel like his stories. I feel like popularity. I think Aiden
I
Hutchinson.
agree.
You look at his name. I mean, he's a legacy from Michigan. He just passed his father in sacks. You look at the state of Michigan where they were 2-3 years ago compared to where they are now. So the fact that they went from a 2-win football team last year to now all of a sudden you see they're in the college football playoff. It's a great story, right? And
It's a
Aiden Hutchinson,
fantastic story.
yeah, he was the catalyst, right? He was one of the catalysts behind Michigan being in the college football playoffs. But it's just, again, I mean, you look at it's just if you take Will Anderson off that defense, Bama can easily lose 3 of those games. He was just that much important. Again, Aiden Hutchinson has the fortune to be playing with David Ajogba. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that last name, but you're playing with him, who has 10 sacks and easily projected as a first round pick. Will Anderson doesn't have anybody else in that defensive line that's even come close to projecting as a first round pick. The responsibilities.
Dallas Turner may, but
he may.
To your point, like the other dude from Michigan's there now.
Yeah, I mean Dallas Turner, Jeremiah Alexander next year might actually join him too. But it's just
Dallas Turner is fantastic.
Yeah, he's absolutely fantastic. But you look at Will Anderson. I mean, you look at the responsibilities that he has to do. He has to cover. You have to kind of run those stunts in the inside. So you kind of have to rush him in the interior. You have to rush him outside. Aiden Anderson has really one responsibility, and that's to simply just get around the edge and get to the quarterback, right? Play as an edge defender. Will Anderson has 4 things he has to try to do, and he does it at an elite level. He is an elite run stuffer, and he's an elite pass rusher.
Yes.
And the fact that he has beaten Aiden Hutchinson on every statistical category, and it's not even close except for sacks.
There was one off, yeah.
It's ridiculous to me, man. Again, it's a popularity contest. It's who has the better story, who has the bigger brand name, and that unfortunately belonged to Aiden Hutchinson, man.
Yeah, and the thing that kills me is when you look at it, to your point, it was only a 1 sack difference.
Yeah.
But it was to the point where Will Anderson has 15.5 sacks, and he has almost 40 solo tackles more than Aiden Hutchinson to go along with that. And I get it. I think your point is incredibly salient about stories because Aiden Hutchinson had that huge game against Ohio State, and Michigan topples Ohio State. Part of me wonders if it's just a little bit of like not realizing how much Will Anderson played on that defense, what he did for that defense. But now that Chris is here, I want to get your take on this, Chris. First, what was your reaction to Bryce winning the Heisman? And second, do you think that Will Anderson should have gotten an invitation?
Heisman, you.
If I may just I did sidetrack for a second. Hey, Jess, how about those Bills? But anyways, so I just wanted to know. So anyways,
God's mercy.
If you want my reaction to Bryce winning was, okay, that's good. In a year where it was really not a clear guy to win, I thought he was the best out of the bunch that you had up there on stage, to be honest with you. Stroud had every chance to win the Heisman, but obviously we saw what happened to them against Michigan, so that kind of lost it for him. And I guess if you want to call it a Heisman moment against Auburn, I just thought that they made more plays down the stretch, but I guess you can go from there. But my thoughts kind of the same as Jansen's and yours. There's no way that Aiden Hutchinson should have been there. He had a really good year, but when you look at
he's a great player.
Yeah, Will Anderson was instrumental in Alabama's defense success, especially when Alabama had some lapses on defense, Will Anderson's been all over the field. And so I think he had way more tackles. I think he actually had more tackles for loss as well than Aiden Hutchinson. And then
every statistical category he had beaten him in except
yeah.
for forced fumbles. That was
I think what was it, the lineman, the D lineman that you guys are big on from Georgia, I think he had a better year or numbers wise than he did as well. So I thought it was just kind of odd that they would have the guy from Michigan coming there, because it was like, no, Will Anderson deserved to be there, in New York. So especially, hey, I'm sorry, Kenny Pickett had a great year, but no, come on, man. Let's be serious. Let's be real here.
Yeah, Will Anderson might be the number one pick in his respective draft if he keeps this up. I mean, what is he, Jens? Is he second or third now all time in tackles for loss in Alabama history? Did he pass Derek Thomas in that metric? And he's just no, he's third then.
Yeah,
because I think it's first is Derek Thomas, second is Derek Thomas, and then it's Will Anderson in tackles for loss in a single season.
Will Anderson was used the way that I feel like Nick Benito should have been used all year. Just let him rush. Just let him rush. He could drop back maybe occasionally, once or twice during the game. Let him rush.
No, I actually have a question for you. Right, yeah. That's a great point. And this is going to sidetrack us a little bit, Jance. I want to hit. When you were watching OU's defense and you saw how effective he was at spying the quarterback, did that make you feel comfortable, or would you have rather had him on go the whole time?
No, that doesn't make me feel comfortable at all, because I felt like, hey, look, one thing that I will say about Grinch in a positive area is that outside of our secondary, a lot of times we were gap sound. We were fundamentally sound. So I wasn't worried about somebody overplaying the gap. I'm like, okay, you could bring in Ogwebu, you could bring in Whittier, you can bring in Stutzman, and you can have them play that spiral. But our best pass rusher, no, he needs to be rushing the ball on third and long. Obviously, you saw that we had problems stopping teams. Nebraska, K-State, West Virginia's, I can just name teams like that where it's 3rd and 15, 3rd and 20, and it feels like it's 3rd and 1. So I don't know why, some games you're sitting there saying when we came after him and made him get out of the pocket and made him feel uncomfortable, that's when his defense was really, really good. Look at a game like Iowa State. When they got Brock Purdy out of his comfort zone and got him out of the pocket, he was sporadic back there. It wasn't picks, but you had fumbles, you had sacks, you had all types of chaos happening. So I still to this day, I don't get why we had him spying. Occasionally, once or twice, just to kind of mix it up. That way it doesn't seem like it's predictable, but no, I don't want to see our best pass rusher, especially our best edge rusher, excuse me. Like, you get what I'm saying? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What about you, Jance? Because I always looked at that and thought, man, if Will Anderson was the only person who our defensive coordinator felt comfortable with letting spy the quarterback, we might be in trouble defensively.
Oh, no, we'll have 3 losses. I mean, it's just you got to rush. I mean, even when Will Anderson is dropping back into coverage, I'm like, what are you doing? Just let him rush the quarterback. Just let him go. Like, you can't let Dallas Turner be the only effective pass rusher coming off the outside. You need some help. You can't just rush 3. We've clearly shown this year that we've not been that strong rushing from the interior that we've done in the past. We've only been really truly effective when we're either blitzing or when 2 of our edge rushers are coming on the outside, where we can squeeze the quarterback in the pocket so that our other interior rushers can try to get home. So, yeah, I completely agree with that. Benito should have been rushing from the start. He is clearly your best pass rusher, and the fact that it's not going to really accomplish that much. And I don't even think he's that good in coverage compared to what he is as a pass rusher.
No, he was great at quarterback spying, to his credit, right? Like, I never, from a perspective of like, oh, well, he's effective at it, I got why they were getting Benito to spy, because he's such a good football player. He's going to go get the job done. But from a schematic standpoint, I'm sitting there like, you're really handicapping yourself by making him the spy.
So here's one of the problems that we sucked at zone coverages this year, whether it was cover 2, cover 3, whatever the case may be. We just did not play that really all that well, especially when it was known pass downs. when you have them third and long, third and 15, third and 12, third and 10, whatever the case may be. We just did not play good coverage as far as zoning up, but it didn't make any sense to me. I'm not saying that that's the recipe for success, but I just feel like with Isaiah Thomas, I know Isaiah Thomas had to play inside an awful lot this year simply because of the injury that happened with Jalen Redmond. But at the same time, and Winfrey and everything. So it's just one of those things where you're looking at Grinch and you're still saying, man, I don't understand why we weren't rushing and getting the ball back. But it is what it is now. I feel like we got the right guy to hopefully kind of take this defense to the next step. And that's no diss to Grinch. I think when Grinch came in and he did what he needed to do. It was effective.
I do want to talk about that, but before we get into that, because I'd like to tie in the coaching carousel in its entirety with some recruiting talk with early National Signing Day. Before we do that, I thought it'd be a good time to just very briefly do a way too early talk on the college football playoffs, right? Because we have Alabama against Cincinnati, Georgia, Michigan. This is going to be very interesting. Cincinnati, the group of five, they're getting their opportunity, and they're getting their opportunity against Alabama. That's going to be a game, obviously, Jansen, I can't wait to see. And then the Michigan-Georgia game, that's going to be interesting because Michigan is a very effective run team. How's that going to work against Georgia's defense? When you're looking at those games, Jance, what are you thinking just from a face value perspective?
Well, I think if we're talking, from the Alabama-Cincinnati game, that's a very interesting matchup because I think Cincinnati matches up better than Georgia does against Alabama. I think I think they have the best secondary in college football. I love their safeties. I love Gardner, Kobe Bryant. They're both tall, physical cornerbacks. Don't really have the speed that can track Jamison Williams, which could be the difference. But as far as from a schematic standpoint, they run a 3-3-5 defense. They run a 3-3-5 nickel-based defense. They're extremely physical. They're disciplined. They have tons and tons of senior leadership, and they've already gone against 4 top 25 offenses. Now you can say that, well, they haven't played the level of competition that Alabama has, but again, you look at some of those teams like Memphis and SMU. Those and Houston,
SMU's a good win.
Yeah, those teams are not slouches. Those are two very explosive offenses that Cincinnati has gone up against. You can't really say the same about Georgia. The only explosive offense they ever went up against was against the University of Alabama. So I feel like Cincinnati, they're going to come into this game as the underdogs. They're going to have tons and tons of motivation. I think Luke Fickell is going to try to get that into their heads. And I think just overall wise, I think with the leadership that they have, they're going to try to make this game just as extremely hard as possible on Bryce Young and Alabama. Remember, Bama doesn't have a dominant run game, which that could be the difference. When you're playing all those defensive backs front, they're gonna dare you to run the football. They're gonna want you to run the football. And we'll see what Bill O'Brien can dial up. He called a great game against Georgia. We'll see what he can do against Cincinnati, but I guarantee you that Cincinnati will probably be more prepared from a pass defensive perspective compared to what Georgia did.
Jance, come on, bro. Come on.
What you want me to say?
No. Alabama's about to wreck shop. Okay. Look, it's about to get messy out there for Cincinnati. I got Alabama easily by 2 touchdowns. Why? Because I think the one thing that Alabama can do that not everybody has been able to do this year against Cincinnati is shut down that tight end. That tight end is their best wide receiver. Yeah, I guess you guys know who I'm talking about. That I can't think of his name. I can't think of his number.
Pearson?
Was it
Pearson?
Yeah. They're going to be able to shut. He's an X factor out there because they throw a lot of deep balls. They throw a lot of different things to him. And I don't think you're going to have busted coverage either, like some of these other teams. I think that with that offense, I mean, here's my thing about Cincinnati. Cincinnati doesn't have a superstar on offense besides Ritter. They have really good guys who can play at a lot of Division I schools. High-level D1 schools, I'll say that, but I don't think that they have that guy. And if you watch games like their game against Navy, and then some of these other games that they struggled in, even a Tulsa, they don't like to be. Offensively, they're not that physical. So I feel like you can attack them And I don't see Ritter breaking off a 40 or 30 or 40-yard run against you guys. I just don't. I think that if he does that, then he probably, ends up on the sideline for a second trying to gather himself back. I just don't see him running on you guys. The thing that I'll be interested in to see in the game is just how does Gardner and then I think Gardner and then Bryant, how do they handle the wide receivers for you guys? Losing Mechie is obviously a big deal in a game like this because Williams, whatever his name is, I don't know
Mechie?
why I can't think of everybody's names, but that kid, obviously, I think that Gardner is probably going to follow him everywhere he goes. I think that they're fine with Bryant being on him, but you would have to think that Gardner is just going to line up wherever the Jameson kid lines up at. So it'll be interesting to see, can somebody attack them? Because not a lot of people have been able to attack them. Because Gardner, I think in the 4 years or however many years he's been in Cincinnati, he hasn't given up a touchdown. He hasn't given up a passing touchdown his way. So it'll be interesting to see, especially with somebody like Bryce Young who can actually challenge you. So I think it's going to be really interesting, and we'll see how. And here's another X factor: that defensive line for Cincinnati, because they're actually pretty athletic. I'm not going to say they're super physical, but they're pretty athletic as well. Can they neutralize that Alabama run game? And
yeah. I agree. I think the thing that I look at, I agree with you, Chris. I think it'll be a 2-touchdown game, but here's where I do think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
One, how does the loss of Mechie affect Alabama? Because that's going to be big from a standpoint of who do they bring in? Now, the good news for Alabama, Trayshawn Holden has looked really, really good when he's come in there. Ja'Cory Brooks has looked really good when he's come in there. Christian Leary has looked really good. And Leary is somebody who they're utilizing at the running back, which allows for some really interesting things to happen. When you can utilize someone from the running back with the kind of speed Christian Leary has, you can create mismatches out the backfield. The one area I do wonder about, though, Chris, is Alabama has struggled with tight ends at times this year, being able to consistently cover them. Now, if I'm looking at the situation and that's the only thing where I'm like, okay, well, that's where Cincinnati can really challenge Alabama, I don't like Cincinnati's chances at all. Because if that's what we can reduce you to, good luck. And then my last question about this is, who's going to stop Will Anderson? Who in the world is going to stop Will Anderson? Because if you commit too much to him, Dallas Turner is going to have a field day. And I don't know if y'all saw the report, Chris Allen may be back for that game. That would be huge because he started this year with a bang. Unfortunately, got hurt on the play. Now, the other game we need to talk about, Michigan, Georgia. This is one where I think it's a little bit more intriguing. I don't know how well Michigan matches up with Georgia from a perspective of they love to run the football, but man, they're good at running the football. So when you look at this, Jance, what are you thinking about the Georgia-Michigan matchup?
I think it's too. I think this is a very even football game. I think the game's going to be one of the trenches. Georgia does things that Michigan doesn't really do that well, and Michigan does things that Georgia doesn't do particularly well, right? Michigan, for the most part, they can get after the quarterback, and we all know Stetson Bennett, when he gets when you put a little pressure on him, he gets rattled, and pretty much that game management, that accurate type of quarterback, that goes away with the quickness. So with Ajogba and Hutchinson coming off the edge, I just don't know if he can handle it. Now you can say the same thing about Cade. You can say the same thing about Cade when you have that front seven going against Michigan's offensive line. Now the good thing for Michigan is that they've played a lot of really good front sevens. They played a lot of good defensive lines, so they kind of know how to handle that type of pressure. Josh Gaddis is one of the best offensive minds, I think, in football. I think for what he's worked with Michigan, he's been extremely creative with his run concepts compared to what Georgia has, where it's kind of been a little bit basic. It's kind of been a little bit too predictable, and they've relied too much on power compared to what Michigan has done. So again, we see that Georgia secondary and even their linebacking core can be caught sleeping a little bit. So maybe that creativity that Josh Gaddis has can throw Georgia's defense off guard. But for me, it's just which quarterback do you trust? Do you trust Cade or do you trust Stetson Bennett? Which quarterback do you trust? Which quarterback is gonna thrive off of the pressure? Because they're no Bryce Young, But Michigan, I will say this: they have pressure. I'm sorry, they have experience playing against elite quarterback play. What they don't do particularly well is really stopping the run. And that's something that Georgia does a lot better. They can establish a run game, and that's where Stetson Bennett plays his best when Georgia's run game can be a little bit more effective. So I mean, this is even. I think that this is an even game. This is just all about who can win more in the trenches, which offensive signal caller can be a little bit more creative, and which quarterback can execute the best.
I don't think that Michigan. So here's the thing about Michigan and Ohio State in the Big Ten this year and this year only. And I'll say that leaning more towards Michigan. Ohio State has always had those SEC athletes up there where they're just better than you, and they're just faster than you, and they're stronger than you. They look faster than you on the field. Michigan this year actually looks that way as well, where they just look better and faster than you. But that's been against Big Ten competition. It hasn't been against anything down south. Okay. So where I'm going with that is the fact that I don't think McNamara is the quarterback to get it done. I think that you're going to have to run more than drag routes and a couple of little slants and posts. They don't really run exotic offense. It's kind of just there. Michigan is one of those teams also where they get off to slow starts, slower than a lot of people. Now, you can't tell me that you've watched 5 minutes of a Michigan game, saw them do a 3-and-out, turned to another game, got interested in it, stayed there for about 20 minutes, came back to the Michigan game, and then Michigan's up 25-7, some weird score. You get what I'm saying? So they score flurries, and they scheme guys open. I'll give them that. They scheme guys open that are down the field, and I mean McNamara can throw a bomb to them. But I don't really see them having all that much success against these teams. They could. I mean, I think Jess just really outlined it for them. I mean, hell, if Jim Harbaugh is watching, he should take what Jess just said. But it's going to be scheme. You're going to have to be disciplined. And I feel like you need to take it to them, kind of like how a lot of teams did with OU. I feel like that's the recipe to beat this team if you're Michigan. You can't score with them. I don't believe that you can. You don't want to give that offense the rock too much time, because their time of possession will be crazy, because unlike a lot of teams, they have 3 to 4 backs that can actually go in there and they can just rotate them the whole time and keep them fresh and run behind that big offensive line. So I feel like with Michigan, you may need to just work that field as much as you can to try to win the time of possession battle. I think if you do that, then you could keep it close, and I think you give yourself a chance to win. If I'm Michigan, I'm going in with the mindset of just get me to the last 5 minutes. If I'm down by 7, if I'm down by 3, just get me to the last 5 minutes, and we'll win the game. That's kind of my mindset.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. This is one where I think if Michigan plays everything right, and I mean they have to do everything right, they can make this a very close game. My question is, though, is what happens if you get in there and you hit a stone wall drive 1, much like Alabama did, and you find yourself in a position where they go score? Can Michigan then recover? That's where I don't know. And that's where I just look at Georgia, and they're a very momentum-based offense. When things are clicking, they're good. But the second you unravel Georgia, at least with Stetson, the whole thing unravels.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing with Michigan. Are they a team that can play from behind? I don't necessarily know if Georgia's even a team that can really play from behind, because watching them against you guys, they did not look comfortable at all.
Yeah, and well, that's a fair question. I don't know if Georgia can play from behind either. I put a little bit more stock in their defense than I do Michigan's defense. Right?
I think the thing for both teams, and it hurts to say, but it's like for both teams, if you take away your best specialty, they don't have a backup plan. And then it just becomes just like a battle of just, which team can actually gain the momentum first? Which team can actually take advantage of the opportunities that were given to him. And again, if you stop Georgia's run game, if you force Stetson Bennett to throw the ball more than 40 times, he's gonna unravel, because that's what Michigan wants you to do. They don't want you to run the football. They want you to throw it so that their pass rushers can get after the quarterback. Michigan is probably the best team in the country when it comes to not just outside edge rushing pressure, but interior pass rushing pressure as well. They're very good in that area. That's what they want you to do. They don't want Georgia to run the football. Now, again, if they run the football and if Georgia can establish the rush, Georgia's winning the game. That's what they want. Stetson Bennett can, if Stetson Bennett throws the ball more than 24, 25 times a game, they can run the football. They can maybe have 150 yards rushing. They can manage the clock, control the clock. Georgia's winning the game. But if Michigan, if they can establish the running, if they can establish the rush, while also in a way scheming guys and putting these receivers in the correct positions, and they can take advantage of those opportunities through the air, then Michigan's going to win this game. It's teams that are really good, very, very good on paper, but I just don't know if you take away that one specific area that they do better than anybody else, it's over. It's just they really have nothing left.
I think that's a perfect synopsis. And before we move on to the coaching carousel chaos and recruiting, I want to address this. Isaiah said Chris won't be back. He even stated himself no. He may have. I haven't seen if he did or not. So if I'm wrong there, by all means, I might be wrong there. I just remember seeing a report from a health standpoint that said his timeline could put him in place to possibly play in the college football playoff. Granted, that was just looking at it from an injury timeline perspective, not anything he had said, at least the article I'm talking about. So if he said he won't be back, I can't particularly blame him. When I was, that was a fake report. Fair enough. I thought it was from like USA Today or something. That might be my bad then. So that just goes to show. One thing we've got to talk about with early National Signing Day right around the corner is recruiting. And Chris, y'all have had a crazy day in that regard, trading blows with cross-river rival, the Texas Longhorns. And from what I understand, it's not going to stop these trading blows. I think y'all are both in line to exchange a few more blows coming up. So what has the coaching carousel meant for you as an OU fan? And talk to us about OU recruiting going into early National Signing Day.
I think that you're kind of seeing his imprint. You're seeing Levy go out there and get his guys, get the type of guys he wants to run that scheme. You're looking at somebody like Brett Venables, and you're just saying that he is also putting his imprint on the defense. I mean, you're just getting the guys that you feel like are really not only going to set you up to have to keep the success, keep the engine going, everything from this season, but also for entering the SEC. And I was telling a friend at the gym this morning. He said, "So Brent Venables, he's a Texas fan, obviously. So he said." So Brent Venables, that was the best hire. That was the flashiest hire that you guys could get. He was the best coach at the time. I said, yeah. And I said, you got to look at the bigger picture. And he said, what, national championship? I said, no, not that. He said, what, keeping Caleb Williams? I said, no, not that. He said, winning a Big 12 championship? I said, no, not even that. He said, well, what's the bigger picture? I said, having instant success and lasting success in the SEC. That's what we want. I mean, you're going to the SEC in 2 years, pretty much in 2023. I think everybody kind of has that marked down as the year that Texas and OU goes to the big.
When it comes, I'm not sure. I just think nobody believes it's going to be 2025 when the contract ends. I don't think there's a soul out there that really believes that's the date. It may be, but
So you're seeing just, Brent Venables really put his imprint and trying to take OU not only in a different direction, not even a different direction, but he's taking them back to what they've always been. So I'm not sure what year it's going to pop off. It could be year 2, it could be year 1, it could be year 4, it could be year 5. But at some point, it's all going to pay off because, I'm one of those guys now that I kind of have a little bit of an ear to the recruiting cycle and everything. Now, I don't really look at the stars anymore. I'm looking at the quality of player. And I think that really is kudos to you for really pointing that out about, I think, like we talked about in past videos, like I think you said the 2020 class or the 21 class. Although we didn't have a high ranking, you look at those composite scores and you're just like, yo, yeah, these are actually really, really good players.
The 2020 class, you had
Yeah,
16 commits, but the average recruit rank would have put you within the top 6, I believe, at
yeah,
number 6. You just didn't take as many players as anybody in the top 10, so it was a little bit of a misleading rank. And that was the larger point, because God, how many kids play high school football in the nation?
yeah.
Right? Nobody has a good number on that, but there's 32 5-stars. How many 5-star talents slip through the cracks?
Yeah.
Don't star watch.
Yeah,
Don't
because that's the
Kirby.
thing. I know my uncle and I, we always talk about, and he always says, yeah, that kid's a 3-star in Louisiana, but if he was in Oklahoma or Texas or even somewhere, let's like Michigan or something like that, he'd be a 5-star. He'd probably be the player everybody's talking about. But but I really feel great about it. This 22 class has been salvaged. I think that it's going to actually turn out better than everybody expected it when Lincoln Riley left. Um, it's definitely some unknowns because you didn't really know about a Nick Evers, before the past couple of days. I mean, you're really set on Malachi Nelson and some of those guys, but like I said, I'm just really excited about it because it seems like this is going to be a really solid class, and you're going to have some holdovers from the Lincoln Riley recruiting cycle, and it seems like this 22 class is going to turn out it could possibly be better than the class he was going to bring in.
Yeah, Jance, what are your thoughts as you've watched the chaos unfold today for Oklahoma, for Texas, National Signing Day as a whole, but also as it pertains to this coaching carousel and the effects that's had?
Well, it's been crazy so far, man. Texas getting Quinn Ewers off the transfer portal. That was really, really huge to see. Oklahoma flipping a commit, getting their quarterback. I feel like they also got a defensive end, if I'm correct about that.
Kobe
They also
McKenzie, the
yeah,
linebacker.
they was able to get him. So you're already seeing kind of the effect of these coaches really starting to take into effect. Brent Venables, what he's able to do. Like I said before, I think he's going to change the philosophy of that team. That the team mindset. Like Chris said, it's not for Big 12 play. It's getting ready for the SEC. Brent Venables knows better than anybody else that this style of play that Oklahoma did with Lincoln Riley, it could be successful, but is it really going to get past Alabama? Is it really going to get past LSU if they're on their P's and Q's, or some of the other, or Georgia, or some of the other best teams in the Big 12? So Brent Venables, I think he's going to do a really, really good job changing the mindset of this football team and taking it to a different direction. And now we really get to see, right, the quality of player. They might not be a 5-star, they might not be a 4-star. Some of these players might be 2-star, 3-star athletes that all of a sudden may just play beyond their potential because of Brent Venables and how the scheme is, and kind of just how the culture and everything is. I mean, you look at Clemson. Clemson's a perfect example of kids that a lot of those kids, when they were winning national championships, weren't 5 and 4-star players. They were 2-star and walk-on players, and they just performed way beyond the star rating just because of the type of environment that they were in. And I feel like Brent Venables can change that, honestly.
Yeah, the one thing I think is so crazy in all of this is when we're looking at the coaching carousel, the ripple effects that have come from this, right? If I'm looking at this from Texas perspective, Miami fires their coach. Mario Cristobal takes the Miami job. Kelvin Banks decommits. He goes to Texas. That's a game changer for Texas. He is a top 20 recruit if he puts pen to paper in the modern era of Texas recruiting. Few days later, Quinn Ewers to the Texas Longhorns through the transfer portal. Chris, y'all get a victim of the coaching carousel in Nick Evers, committed to Florida. Dan Mullen gets booted out of there. Should have been booted when he said, "This is the season. We don't focus on recruiting now." He wouldn't have got back on the plane if I was the AD. He'd have been left at the tarmac. But now, because of that, you get Nick Evers. From a schematic standpoint, somebody who fits into that scheme that I believe, I have no proof of this, but just the offense I believe Lebby will look to run, Evers fits in that like a glove. If you look at what he did this past season at Flower Mound High School, had another good year passing, not quite the year he had the year before, But if I'm not mistaken, I think I was told that they lost a good amount of talent on that Flower Mound team. Still a very talented team. It was a young team, if I'm thinking of the correct team, which I believe I am. But what Evers did do this year, he really started showing what he can do in terms of running the football. Very athletic kid, good size, someone you really like the prospect of developing. But one of the things I think we need to talk about that the coaching carousel has kind of made the question be asked, what should we do with early National Signing Day? Because we've been put in a position where all of these teams, a Notre Dame and OU recovering, these kids are put in a precarious position with early National Signing Day being so soon. Granted, they could choose to hold back. What do y'all do with early National Signing Day? Do we keep it as it currently is, or do we rethink this because of this coaching carousel and kind of the implications it has shown us? Whoever wants to answer that first.
Okay,
Yes,
I can go. I've never really been a big fan of early signing day. I mean, I can understand and I get it, but I just never really been a big fan of it because of conference championships, and you have to prepare for a conference championship, and you have to deal with, try to do early, signing day at the same time. Nick Saban had to learn that lesson back in 2018 where he tried to kind of ignore it, and try to focus on the conference championship game, and then look what happened. They got absolutely butchered. So many decommits that went on to different universities, and something that Nick Saban, he hated, but he had to make adjustments to it. I think the same thing should happen here. I mean, again, there's way too many coaching changes. These kids, are they really going to make up their minds? These kids are. They were at one point already committed to a program. They were promised this by certain coaches, and then for them to leave, now all of a sudden you gotta try to, you're kind of pressured now to try to sign on to a different school, and I just don't think that is good. I just don't think it's good for the kids. I think that, again, I've always been a fan of just one recruiting period, and that's always been the February one, because that's a lot of time. Just in case if coaches get fired, you can have a chance to, reestablish those relationships with the university and some of those new coaching staffs there. It just gives you enough time to do that. I just don't think that early signing period, when it comes to these new coaches and going on during this situation, I just don't think it's the best situation for both the university and the kids.
Mm-hmm. And I'll piggyback that and just say that I think that for the past few years, you've been able to kind of go under the radar with it as far as the problem, which obviously has presented itself in 2021. I think that it was primed, it was ready to be exposed for what it is with the early signing day. I think early signing day is great. I kind of miss just the one signing day that you can literally get on ESPN and CBS Sports and literally just watch it all freaking day. Like, I missed that. Like, that was great to me. But I understand just the money, all the rest of everything that goes into it, how it is. A lot of kids want to do that. And plus, hey, you definitely want to get these kids signed so you can see who's going to be a mid-year and not or not, But at the same time, I think that with the caliber of coach that moved around this year, I think that's what really exposed it for what it is and kind of showed that. Because, hey, look, do I think that Lincoln Riley is crazy for going there? Hell yes, I do. Do I think that it's funny that they call him Tebow? And, if you don't know what that means, then look it up. Yeah, that's funny. But I think that he's a bad person that deep down inside. No, I'm not going to say that. I don't know him like that. But it still makes him look kind of crappy in the eyes of so many people. It makes somebody like, gosh, Ty, help me out. The coach for Notre Dame, not Notre Dame, but the coach for LSU now.
Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly?
Yeah, it makes people hate him even more.
That fake accent?
Well, also the fake Southern accent doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's just terrible. But then you look at somebody like Mario Cristobal. It makes people just kind of become dumbfounded. Like, what? Like, you had something really good going at Oregon. You leave it to go back and try to do something that many have failed at before you. Like, who are you, Hercules? And then you look at somebody like Billy Napier, who's just kind of not even went through, his name hasn't even went through the mud, but he's over there basically making every recruit that was being recruited there send in tape again so they can be re-recruited. So you're looking at just this whole coaching carousel for what it is, and like as a whole, it just really the system failed this year.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's going to be something where you would want to take away the early signing period, but I mean, I don't know. It's definitely it definitely has its problems that need to be worked out.
I think actually Tijuana here brings up a great point in both of his comments, and I'm going to re-highlight the first one because I think there's ways to work around this, Tijuana. I don't think this is the major issue with it. That is less early can come in for the spring semester. That's certainly a true statement. No arguments here. I just think that kids would do that regardless, so there'd be workarounds for that. However, I don't think I could agree any more with your second statement, saying that you think a better cure than removing early signing day would be some tampering rules for coaching changes. And, it's ironic because on the NFL Network the other day, they were talking about how come the college football doesn't have a system like the NFL, where your agents you can't talk to another team until the season is done. That right there seems to be a very common sense practice to me. And it'd be tough because now how are you going to do recruiting? But at the end of the day, we just need a system that gives players the same freedom to make the correct choice for themselves with people who are going to be there.
And that's something that a lot of that I would say a healthy portion. I wouldn't say like a just crazy amount, but there's a healthy portion of OU fans who really feel like Lincoln just gave up on the season. Like he was trying to get out, like he already knew. Because from all the speculation that came out, it seems like from what I heard, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but he'd already pretty much had taken the LSU job. They had that kind of planned out. Everything was situated. And then, but he had been talking to USC since September. So I don't really know what's true, what's real, but I do know it just feels like maybe our coach wasn't dedicated all the way. And that's kind of what that's kind of what this whole thing, that's what this signing period kind of shed light on that as well. So I mean, I think something like that as far as tampering rules, I think that would definitely help. But at the same time, it's one of those situations where you kind of have to stay in the middle because on one hand, you don't want a coach leaving and taking players and doing all the rest of this stuff. But at the same time, I mean, who's to say that the next Fleck doesn't, pop up? Somebody who's coaching at Central Michigan and is now going to be the head coach at Michigan. Like you don't want to ever get in the way of somebody taking a big promotion, taking a big payday, and making bank. You don't want to get in the way of that. But it's just the fact that. We are at the mercy of the NCAA, and they are not the greatest committee ever, as we all know. And I think that that's kind of where it falls to the side. I mean, hell, we're still trying to figure out a freaking playoff whenever we have FCS schools and and D2 schools and stuff like that running playoffs. It's just fine with 20 plus teams. It makes no sense that we're trying to figure out what works best for FBS. So we're really failing all over. I mean, hell, I think the thing that people have to realize with this early signing day and all the rest of that, it took us ages, not years, ages, just to finally even entertain the idea of having college football players or college players in general paid. So this may be something. This is like not even on that spectrum. That's not even on that scale of an argument, but. Like I said, with the NCAA and everything, there's no telling. There's no telling when this can get done.
Yeah. So when we have about 10 minutes left in this episode, the thing I want to talk about now is just early signing day recruiting as a whole. Someone asked a question earlier, Chris, that if they thought y'all could get back with Dindy in that process, and then Jance, we need to talk about some Alabama recruiting as well. But I'll let you go ahead and answer that, Chris. Do you think that there's any chance y'all can get back in the battle for Dindy? Before today, I'd have said probably not. But you flipped Kobe McKenzie. So
Kobe did tweet out that, he's not the only one, basically.
Well, yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think so because I know he was
I agree.
big on Tibbs, and I think that a great point that people have pointed out over and over again is just the fact that he didn't really vibe that well with Venables because Venables I think sees him as a D tackle and he wants to play outside. So he doesn't want to play that technique. So I think that that's something that I'll really keep in mind. And obviously Texas A&M was his second choice. His dad is there as a coach. All everything kind of lines up there. He is an OU legacy. I think that coming to somewhere like OU with Venables and what they're going to do, I think that they could develop him into something special. But then again, you look at that Neal kid down there at Texas A&M, and you're saying, okay, I guess that's who Dindy thinks that he could be or be better than. So to answer that question directly, I would lean towards saying no right now.
Okay. Jance, what about you? You think there's any chance?
Maybe. I mean, you never know what's going on. I mean, again, I always go back to Mac Brown. I mean, a lot of people didn't think that Mac Brown can flip the recruits that he did, because he only had like 2, 3 weeks of recruiting, and then all of a sudden they went from 50th to all the way to 30th in just literally in the span of about a week. So anything is possible. Again, Venables, I think again he's a big brand name right now in college football. I think a lot of kids can have confidence in that, and who knows? It's definitely a possibility. It's 50-50 in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, like I said, before today, I would have probably leaned much more to no. I'm still leaning no, just for the simple fact that his dad has a job on campus. They love Texas A&M from everything I've heard.
Yeah.
Granted, he is an OU legacy, and the way he's an OU legacy just kind of means a lot. Chris, if I'm not mistaken, his parents met on OU's campus. So that's a very personal relationship. I didn't know about the Venables relationship, but that would make sense.
Yeah.
But now we got to talk about the number one recruiting class in the nation, and if Alabama can maintain that, because Texas A&M is surging. Georgia's doing something great. But let's talk about some Alabama recruiting, Jance, because Bama's locked in some big-time battles coming up on National Signing Day. We have Isaiah in the chat asking about Damani Jackson. So we'll start with the defensive back position. When we're looking at Alabama recruiting from the defensive back perspective, what are the names you're really looking for right now that you would like to add into this class?
Well, I know it's a very, very slim chance of this happening, but I really, really wanted Denver Harris. I don't know if he's going to go with Alabama. Is right. It looks like it's a battle between A&M and Texas for him. But if there's a slight chance that maybe Denver Harris, that we can try to maybe pull off Denver Harris, that could be cool. Earl Little Jr. is one of the big names that Bama has been trying to get for weeks. He's been Cristobal as a favorite for I don't know how many months now. Don't really know too much of the status what's going on between Earl Little Jr. and Alabama right now, but that would be a huge get. He's a very athletic guy. Again, he's fast. He's from that Florida area that Nick Saban loves to recruit a lot. I also look again like Traquan Fogans, right? If we do end up getting, let's say maybe a cornerback or two, what's going to be his status, right? Is he going to sign? Is he going to sign for the early signing period, or is he going to go somewhere else? Again, he committed to Auburn. Decommitted, joined the University of Alabama. He goes to one of the best high schools, not the best high school in 7A in Thompson, which again another monster season with three state state titles. So I wonder what's going to go on with that. But I think the biggest name, in my opinion, is going to be Eli Ricks. That's the name that I really want to keep track of, because if Eli Ricks commits to the University of Alabama, he's going to be starting from day one next year. He's starting. From what I've been hearing, Ohio State, they're out of the picture. That's one of the teams that Eli Ricks had listed down. So now it's between Georgia, Southern Cal, and Alabama. And again, Ricks listed his reasons about why he could potentially go to Alabama. It's a lot of really, really good reasons. So Alabama is in it just as good as Georgia and Southern Cal is. I think Alabama might be a little bit more of a favorite because he does have that relationship with our defensive backs coach. So if we do ended up with Eli Ricks, I don't know if that's going to affect Damani Jackson's decision. I don't know if that's going to affect maybe Traquan Fogan's decision. I don't know if that might even affect maybe Earl Little Jr.'s decision. But I will say to just get at least one or two of those guys from this recruiting class, that'll be huge because Alabama is lacking depth at our secondary. Marcus Banks potentially going to Miami. He's in the transfer portal. The fact that we could lose both Jalen Armour-Davis and Josh Jobe is probably going to come back, but Jalen Armour-Davis might go to the NFL next year. You're lacking. You're just again Christian Story and Kool-Aid are the next guys up in at those cornerback slots, and that's pretty much about it. So you really need to kind of get some depth there. I just wonder if one of the big guys kind of commits, how is that going to affect the rest of our cornerback targets that we're trying to get?
So I think when I'm looking at this, I love the names you mentioned. I'd love if we could get Ricks. I just don't see it happening. For whatever, I just don't see that going through. I'd love to get him. He's an incredibly talented guy. If I'm looking at this, though, the names I'm really interested in, Traquan, he's a part of the class. Damani Jackson is somebody that the Crimson Tide would love nothing more than to get. And I think Damani is a guy that really needs to be pushed on because what you brought up with Denver Harris has had an incredibly intriguing process where when his top four were LSU, Alabama, Texas, and A&M, for the long haul, it looked like a 25-25-25-25 split between those teams. Given any given week, no matter who you talk to somebody that's in the know at A&M, they're thinking, oh, well, we have a pretty good chance. Although A&M has really surged on him as of late. They weren't as in a good of position as they are now a few months ago. They've really done a lot of good work getting really well acclimated to that battle. They were always in it. They've just done a phenomenal job the past few months. If you asked me how confident I was with Denver Harris, I'm much less confident now than a few weeks ago when I said I thought Alabama could be on the precipice of being in a really good position there. I'm less confident. But the reason why I'm still very hopeful, he loves Nick Saban, right? That he's talked about how Nick Saban is someone he really wants to play for and that it'd be a dream. And as long as Saban is there, I give it a chance. But that's why I think Damani Jackson is so just needed and so big this year is because Denver's a bit of a question mark to me. Because I think Denver, he likes everywhere that he has named right now. I have no inside information on this. This is just from the outside looking in. I think Denver could see himself playing it everywhere he's listed. And that's kind of a good problem to have, but a very big problem when you're signing in a few days. So because of that, Devin Moore is also a name that I think is very interesting, very talented prospect, has kind of flown under the radar. He's a name to watch out for, though, in case things don't go Alabama's way for Damani Jackson, Denver Harris. But I think Damani is someone that needs to be pushed on. Another name I'm going to give two. I think Earl Little Jr., I'm very confident there. Very confident that Alabama is going to end up with Earl Little Jr. That right there would be a huge win. And then the last name, Dalen Everett. Just decommitted from Clemson, just got a crystal ball, if I'm not mistaken, for Alabama. 5-star cornerback, and he would be a massive addition.
That's
but to your point,
IMG.
Yeah, big get. And Alabama has a great pipeline to IMG. They have had a beautiful relationship there. That would be huge for Alabama because that secondary is going to be big. Now, you listed some guys, and now I want to hear your opinion on this. Do you believe that – oh, God, why did I just – Terrion Arnold. Do you believe that Terrion Arnold's going to end up back at safety?
I think so. I mean, we're going to be lacking – I think we're going to be lacking a little bit of depth at the safety position. Do they have him at star or do they have him at outside corner?
So when he initially came, they told him that I think he was initially going to be worked out at outside corner. He kind of wanted to play that. Mm-hmm. If I'm wrong, please someone let me know down in chat. If I'm not mistaken, they were going to try him at outside corner, but as the depth chart kind of unfolded, safety became a position where they needed depth. And this kid – unbelievably talented.
He's got ball skills. The dude can track the football, man, and he
can lay the wood.
Absolutely. And again, you talk about that potential. Jordan Battle might go to the NFL next year. So what are you
Jordan
gonna do
Battle?
with him?
I think might take his.
He might go
NFL draft grade. Yeah.
DeMarco Helms, if he continues to play like he did against Georgia, he's going to get that. He's going to get that grade. He's going to look at it. He might go to the NFL next year. Daniel Wright is going to be gone next year. Well, he has 1 year left of eligibility, but he might go to the NFL. So you're going to be lacking a little bit of depth at that safety position. Antonio Kite, is he playing defense, or are they going to make him a receiver?
I would imagine he's probably going to be on the defensive side, especially with Isaiah Bond coming in at wide receiver. Mm-hmm. But the beautiful thing about Kite, he's someone who I could easily see them saying like, "Hey, we think you're going to be a DB now," and then when they get him in there, they're going to be like, "Hey, you go on offense. You're just great there." He has that ability to do either, so he's very interesting in that regard.
Okay.
Guys, I just want to chime in and say I really do believe that Damani Jackson is going to USC.
He could. He could
could.
because to your point, Chris, he just took a visit to USC. Lincoln Riley is doing everything in his power to keep him there. He's a Southern Cal kid. He was originally committed to USC, but old Saint Nick has got a little bit of a Christmas present coming early as he wants to see Damani Jackson again. Now, as we're about to close this, I want to give a chance for each of you to give a name that you think would be huge for your recruiting class and someone that you think people should keep an eye on. Chris, if I was to ask you for a name for OU that you thought y'all were in a really awesome battle for and just to keep an eye on, who would that be?
Oh man. I think right now with what Kobe was saying, I think you would say Dindy. I think it would definitely
Interesting.
that I think it could be Dindy. I don't really know any other names that you could possibly get that you're like truly in a battle for. Because I mean, some of these kids are it's just a foregone conclusion. I mean, hell, I wish we could get back in on Relique. Really,
yeah, that's pretty much well done.
Yeah, that's pretty much well done. So you're looking at some of those names, and you're saying like just salvage the class because you've seen the kids who stayed committed. But as far as just any battle or anything like that, I could see that. Maybe if we wouldn't have acted like some a-holes towards Evan Stewart, saying that, hey, we're not taking another wide receiver. Maybe that could have been something that could have happened.
Because he loves Evers.
Yeah.
Loves Evers.
Yeah. So I guess now, I mean, that's probably the only big name that I can say. But as far as the class, I mean, I'm just really excited. I'm really excited to see, watch some film on the Evers kid, but also I think that Gibson kid out of Florida as well.
Really talented.
Yeah,
really
6'5" wide receiver. Come on. I mean, him and with Rodney Anderson's little brother coming in, he's another 6'4" kid. You're looking at them and saying, man, maybe year 2 or year 3, those kids should be in prime position to really make a big deal. They probably can make some noise, coming in this year into their freshman year. Who knows? But yeah, you're looking at the size of those wide receivers and say, hey, man, if they're mobile and they can move, that's going to be crazy across the board because you got to think, let's say that in 2022 or 2023, let's say that you have Nick Anderson, 6'4", you have a 6'5" Everett Gibson, and then you have a 6'5", 6'6" Caden Helms. Like that's at tight end. That's pretty good. So
that's nice,
that's size, and those kids can still move too. So you're just gonna look for them to be able to have that I guess that innate ability to actually separate, which our bigger wide receivers haven't had in a while. Outside of Theo Weiss, I think Theo Weiss and Mike Woods. Those two can create separation. I think that's kind of the problem. I think some of us who were a little bit more critical of Hazelwood had. Granted, he came off an ACL tear. It's just the fact that we felt like he didn't create enough separation on his routes. So, Dendy would probably be the big name that I'd be looking for. But I'm just excited about any of these other kids just to get them in and see what the system is all about with Levy.
Absolutely. Jans, what do you think?
Well, I think the big name for me, and this is probably unlikely to happen, but the big name is probably Devin Campbell from Texas, only because I love interior offensive linemen. It's a big need that we desperately need. We've recently tried to go on a push to try to see if we can do anything with him at all. It'll be a huge get in general for the offensive line. Some other kind of small names. Kendrick Law, the cornerback from Louisiana. Nick Saban took a visit over there, and again had a huge conversation with him and his family. And for the most part, that Nick Saban wants Kendrick Law. Kendrick Law is a very good cornerback prospect out of Louisiana. I look at Shaz President from Louisiana as well, very talented receiver from Louisiana. That's another name that Nick Saban took a visit to. Right? You look at the Marvin Jones Jr., the defensive end out of American Heritage, teammates from Earl Little Jr. So that's kind of interesting to see what can happen there, because if Earl Little Jr. commits to Alabama, it could be a possibility that Marvin Jones Jr. can also do the same. They're both very, very close friends. Again, really, really good teammates at American Heritage. So that's something that could do good. And again, I always kind of like to focus on the transfer portal, because we all saw that Nick Saban took a big focus on trying to get some really good players off that transfer portal. We didn't need it. We didn't need it, but Nick Saban still kind of dove down in there, see what he can get, and he doesn't mind having one and done players. And I look at a guy like Eli Ricks, who most likely is probably going to USC or Georgia. I think it might be those top two, but if he ends up going to the University of Alabama, he's starting from day one, and you already have a day one impact player, all-star caliber player already on your team. That just, again, it turns what could be a weakness next year automatically into a strength with him and Kool-Aid, or potentially Damani Jackson if we can get one of those big 5-star guys there.
Yeah, I agree. So for my name, I love the offensive line. I love the pick of Dendy, Chris, because that's naturally where all OU fans are going to be watching to see when he puts pen to paper. That is when they'll believe it, and rightfully so when you have a legacy like that. For me, I'm going on the opposite side of the ball as you, Jance. You picked a great offensive lineman. I'm going to pick a great defensive lineman. You named one in Marvin Jones Jr., but I'm going to name Anthony Lucas out of Arizona as a name that would be a massive win for the Crimson Tide in this class. That kid right there, very talented. Alabama could use some defensive line prospects. They got a lot of talent there, but let's be honest, with what the Crimson Tide likes to do, you're never going to argue against top-tier defensive line talent. Damon Payne is currently in the system, but we haven't seen him this year at all. For what reason, I'm not sure. Probably because it's a difficult system to learn up front, and it's a bit of a learning curve for those guys. So hopefully he's somebody that can come in and really contribute in the offseason and into next year. But Anthony Lucas is who I'd turn my attention to as an Alabama fan, to what we can do in that recruitment battle in the time we have left. Guys, I think with that, that's about it for this episode. Chris, where can they find you at? Jance, where can they find you at?
Jess, go ahead. You can go first. I just still feel bad about the Bills.
Ooh.
Oh boy. So yeah, guys, you guys can find me on YouTube at Gent Sports. If you guys want to see some classic rants, including talking about my Bills choking against the Buccaneers once again, you guys can absolutely find me there at search on the YouTube Gent Sports. The first thing will pop up is my name there. You can also follow me on Twitter at Jan716. My Instagram is also Jan Sports there. If you want to have any type of conversation with me, you can always slide in the DM. You can always, again, message me. I will always respond back to comments. We can have a good conversation talking about college sports overall wise. But yeah, that's where you guys can find me at, man. I'm excited for signing day tomorrow. Hopefully that can take the stress and release some of the pain that I felt on Sunday. Hopefully we can finish
Is it tomorrow or Wednesday?
It's Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay, yeah, Wednesday. Yeah, so
God.
I hope it was tomorrow. Please,
I wish it was tomorrow.
Relieve the pain. Relieve my pain, please. But no, so yeah, Wednesday. I'm excited for it. Hopefully we'll finish number one. If not, we're gonna. I still feel like we're gonna have an elite recruiting. As long as we can get the guys. As long as we can just get really sign the 21 guys that we have. That's pretty much all I care about. Because if Jeremiah Alexander goes. If he goes, oh boy, I wanted that kid since he was a freshman when he was at Thompson, man. I wanted him so badly. So as long as we can keep the remaining guys that we have, that's all I care about. But yeah, I'm excited for signing day on Wednesday.
Everybody, you can find me at the Horns Down Podcast. We're on every platform you possibly think of: Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Follow us on Twitter, Horns Down 55. Again, that's Horns Down 55 on Twitter. We're live and direct, and we are beefing with every Texas fan we possibly can right now. Sometimes I don't even know who's tweeting. I think it's Seth. I think it's me. I'm like, who is this? Does somebody have access to this account? But we take shots at Texas all day, and that's what we do, and we love
Sometimes he takes a shot at me just because he's confused.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, and you still haven't apologized to Pete Golding.
We'll never do it, Chris.
Exactly.
That would never happen.
No,
until we win a national I won't do it until we win another national championship.
If I ever make a burner account, well, I'll make 2 burner accounts, one for Texas people and then another one for you two guys, and it'll be called Pete Pete Golden's burner account, and you will know it's me because I will say,
no.
"Are you going to apologize or no?" So, no, yeah. You guys need to. You really need to rethink that because he's been great for you guys. Okay, you saw what he did against Georgia.
He
Anywho,
has his moments.
He had his moments. Exactly.
I'll put it like this, though. Here's where I do agree with you. Nick sees something in it. And if Nick sees something in somebody, it's hard for me to just be like, no. But Nick obviously sees something in him. But, guys, this has been a great show as always. We'll be back here next Monday, 5:30, to talk about more college football madness, and especially as my connection is going all over the place here. We'll be back next Monday to talk about more recruiting, especially with early National Signing Day passing over. We're going to have a ton to talk about in that regard. Probably Oklahoma will have 5 new coaching hires by that point, filling out position coaches. We're going to have to talk about that and just general college football craziness. But as always, from us, thank y'all for tuning in. Have a good evening. Go watch your Monday Night Football, and we'll see y'all next week. That's it. See you.